Welcome to our channel, the home of knowledge, curiosity, and storytelling. We uncover forgotten histories, decode ancient secrets, and bring you insights that inspire. Get ready to travel through time and imagination. Now we explore, explain, Pandora's Box, the awakening of humanity. A mythic journey through curiosity, suffering, and hope.
Long before the world was shaped as we know it, before the seas carried the reflections of men and cities rose in stone and song, there was only the age of the Titans and the gods. The earth was young, tender in its creation, and Olympus stood high above the clouds, gleaming like a crown upon the sky. In that realm, the gods reigned with splendor and suspicion alike, for they knew that power was fragile and that the smallest spark could ignite rebellion. It was in this delicate balance that the story of Pandora began, not as the tale of a single woman's mistake, but as a divine experiment in the nature of curiosity, love, and consequence. Among the gods, there was one who loved humankind more deeply than any other, Prometheus, whose name meant forethought. He had molded mankind out of clay, breathed life into their hollow forms, and watched them stumble into being, innocent and helpless beneath the cold stars. He pitied their frailty. The beasts of the field had claws, fur, and cunning to survive. The birds had wings, the fish had scales, but man had nothing but his mind, his trembling hands, and his thirst for light. So Prometheus, in his boundless compassion and defiance, stole fire from the forge of Hephaestus and brought it down from Olympus to the world of men. The flame was more than warmth. It was knowledge, skill, and rebellion. It allowed man to cook his food, forge his weapons, and keep darkness at bay. But it also gave birth to ambition. The mortals, once humble and fearful, began to build temples, craft tools, and challenge the mysteries of the divine. Their eyes, once turned upward in awe, now gleamed with a kind of confidence that made Zeus, the ruler of gods, uneasy. For what are gods if men begin to rival them? Zeus's anger was not the thunder that destroys, but the calm before it, the stillness of a storm thinking. He saw that Prometheus's theft had changed the course of creation. The flame was not easily taken back, for it had already touched human hearts. Instead, Zeus devised another kind of retribution, one that would not strike humanity down, but would teach them their limits, a punishment wrapped in beauty, a curse that would appear as a gift. Thus, in the brilliance of his cunning, Zeus called upon the gods of Olympus to fashion a creature unlike any before, the first woman, endowed with every divine gift and every hidden danger. Hephaestus, the god of fire and craft, molded her from earth and water, a living sculpture of grace and perfection. Athena breathed into her the breath of wisdom and taught her the arts of weaving and skill. Aphrodite touched her lips with desire and beauty that could soften any heart. Hermes, sly and silver-tongued, whispered into her ears the gift of persuasion, and with it, deceit. From Apollo, she received music and the charm of voice. From Demeter, fertility and abundance. And from Zeus himself, curiosity, the secret seed of her destiny.
When all was done, the gods gazed upon their creation, and even they marveled at what they had made. She was radiant, not divine, but dangerously near it. She was called Pandora, meaning all gifted. But among those gifts was one more, a sealed jar, or as later generations mistranslated it, a box, a vessel of mystery that she was told never to open. Within it, Zeus had locked the essence of all things man should fear: pain, sorrow, sickness, jealousy, aging,
and death.
Yet he also placed one final spirit at the bottom, concealed beneath the shadows: hope, the light that would remain when all else was lost. When Prometheus heard of this creation, he knew at once that it was a trap, another layer in Zeus's endless game of balance. He warned his brother Epimetheus, afterthought, not to accept any gift from the gods. But Epimetheus, unlike his brother, lived not by foresight, but by heart. And when Pandora came to him, carrying the divine grace of heaven and the innocence of earth, his resolve melted. He saw not a snare, but a miracle. He took her into his home, into his life, and into his heart. For a time, the world seemed perfect. The air was mild, the rivers gentle, and mankind lived without grief. Yet the mind of Pandora was never still. She had been made curious, not by accident, but by divine design. Each day she looked upon the box that Zeus had given her as a wedding gift, sealed with gold and tied with a cord that glimmered like the threads of fate. It was beautiful, yet silent. What could lie within? She would sit beside it for hours, running her fingers along its carvings, scenes of gods and monsters, of wars yet unfought, of faces she did not know. The box called to her in whispers too soft to hear, yet too deep to ignore. There were days she dreamed of opening it, just for a moment, to peek and see if it was filled with jewels or light. There were nights when she woke, trembling, imagining faint sounds from within, sighs, murmurs, almost human voices calling her name. Epimetheus, ever loving but heedless, told her not to worry. It is only a token, a symbol of the gods' favor. Leave it closed and we shall have peace. But peace was never meant to last. The gift of curiosity is both the root of wisdom and the seed of ruin. Pandora's soul was divided between love and longing, a conflict older than the stars. The gods had made her to be both a blessing and a test, and she could not escape her own design. In the quiet hours when Epimetheus slept, she would gaze at the box and feel it pulse faintly, as though alive. The thought grew in her mind, what if the gods had hidden not evil, but knowledge? What if opening it would reveal the truth of existence itself? Here lies the brilliance and cruelty of Zeus's plan, for the gods did not simply create punishment, they created choice. They made Pandora free to obey or defy, and in that freedom, they mirrored the condition of humanity itself. For the essence of being mortal is the ability to choose, even when the choice leads to pain.
As weeks passed, her dreams became heavier. In them, she saw visions of light breaking through darkness, of voices crying to be released, of the world beyond her reach. She awoke one night to a soft glow from the box. The air trembled and a distant thunder rolled across the sky, as if Olympus itself was watching, waiting. She approached the box slowly, heart pounding. The silence of the world was immense. Her hand hovered over the lid. For a long moment she resisted. Then reason bent to curiosity, and curiosity to desire. Her fingers pulled the golden cord loose. The knot that bound her fate came undone. At first, nothing happened. Then a faint hiss, like breath escaping the lungs of the world. A wind rose, cold and sharp, and from the box burst 1,000 shadows, shrieking forms that whirled through the air, invisible yet felt. They were the spirits of disease, despair, envy, grief, deceit, and death. They swarmed across the land, entering the hearts of men and beasts alike. The world, once perfect, became flawed. The fields withered. Men quarreled. Women wept. Sickness touched the young and old. Pandora screamed and tried to close the lid, but it was too late. The darkness had flown. She fell to her knees in horror, tears streaking her face. "What have I done?" she cried. "What curse have I unleashed upon the world?"
But then from the box came one last whisper, softer than sorrow, warmer than fire. It was hope. A gentle light rose from the jar and lingered above her hands, soothing her trembling soul. The world outside still suffered, but within that suffering burned a small, defiant flame. Hope did not erase pain. It gave it meaning. It did not cure death. It taught endurance. Pandora, who had been both the destroyer and the savior of humanity, realized that her act, though born of curiosity, had given the world depth. Without suffering, there can be no compassion. Without ignorance, no wisdom. Without despair, no need for hope. Epimetheus came to her, saw her tears, and for a moment was angry. But as he listened and saw the light of hope flicker between them, his anger faded into understanding. Together they closed the box and buried it deep in the earth, knowing that what had been released could never be undone, but what remained would guide mankind through every shadow. Thus began the age of human struggle. Pain became a teacher, and joy a reward earned through endurance. The gods watched from Olympus, some satisfied, others pitying. Prometheus, still bound in his chains for stealing fire, smiled through his torment, for he understood that even in punishment there was creation. The world had changed, not for the worse, but for the real. And so the myth of Pandora is not merely the tale of a woman's folly, it is the story of the first awakening of human consciousness, for Pandora's curiosity was the spark of knowledge, her defiance the birth of free will, and her sorrow the beginning of empathy. In the opening of the box, humanity inherited not doom, but depth, the infinite interplay of light and shadow that defines our existence.
When the last echo of hope faded into the trembling air and the lid of the box closed again, the world was no longer the same. What had once been an untouched garden beneath the favor of the gods was now a vast and trembling landscape of shadows. The soil that once bloomed with endless harvest began to dry beneath the heat of new suns. Rivers turned restless, and the laughter of humankind became laced with fear. For the first time, men knew hunger, sickness, and despair. And for the first time, they looked to the heavens not with praise, but with pleading eyes. Pandora stood amidst it all like a statue of remorse, her eyes hollow from weeping, her hands trembling from the weight of what she had done. She could hear the distant cries of children, the mourning of mothers, the wails of men as storms ravaged their lands. Yet beneath her sorrow, a deeper current moved, a strange awareness that the world had become alive. Where once it had been motionless in perfection, now it breathed, bled, and changed. Epimetheus held her close, his love scarred but unbroken. He no longer saw her as a divine gift, but as a mirror of himself, flawed, fragile, and capable of error. Together they walked through the wounded earth, trying to console those who suffered, though they knew no words could undo what had been released. In those early days of suffering, mankind learned lessons no god could teach. They learned the shape of hunger, the sound of grief, and the bitterness of envy. They discovered that love could wither under hardship, that trust could break, and that dreams could die. But they also discovered something else: endurance. For every night that seemed endless, a dawn still came. The flame Prometheus had stolen burned low but never died, flickering defiantly in human hands as though it knew that to survive was itself an act of rebellion. The gods watched from Olympus, silent in their triumph. Zeus's plan had succeeded. Humanity now understood their place beneath the divine. Yet even he, in his eternal wisdom, felt an unease. For the sorrow that spread through the world carried an echo upward, a faint vibration that even Olympus could not escape. The prayers of mortals, filled with agony and longing, began to stir something unexpected: empathy in the hearts of certain gods. Athena, goddess of wisdom,
watched Pandora and Epimetheus wandering through the desolate earth. She saw Pandora tending to the sick, bringing water to those dying of thirst, and sitting beside the old as they breathed their last. "There," said Athena quietly, "is the birth of wisdom, not in knowledge, but in compassion." But Hermes, ever the trickster, smiled with amusement. "Compassion is merely another form of curiosity," he said. "The mortal woman seeks to understand the pain she caused, as though meaning can make it lighter. Let her try. It will lead her deeper into her own sorrow."
And so the gods debated, as the world below groaned and grew. Humanity, unaware of the divine eyes upon them, began to form their first words of prayer. Not the simple hymns of gratitude that once floated toward Olympus, but raw, desperate cries, the language of suffering. These cries became the first poetry, the first music. When a mother lost her child, her lament became a song. When a man saw the sky darken and thunder break his crops, he lifted his voice in fear, but in that very sound, he found a rhythm. And so art was born, not from joy, but from pain. Pandora wandered far from her home, unable to bear the stillness of her guilt. She walked among villages where fever struck the young, where jealousy tore friends apart, where death came quietly in the night. Everywhere she went, people recognized her, for word had spread. She was the one who opened the box. Some spat at her feet, some wept and begged her to undo what had been done, and some simply turned away, too broken to blame. Yet, there were a few who looked at her with understanding, as though they saw in her their own reflection, someone who had made a mistake and could not escape its consequences. It was during this wandering that Pandora began to perceive the strange duality of her act. Though she had unleashed horrors upon the earth, she also saw how humanity responded to them, with resilience, with tenderness, with a growing awareness of one another. The sick were tended by the healthy, the hungry shared with the starving, the lonely found solace in community. Pain had woven people together in ways comfort never could. One evening, as the sun sank behind a blood-red horizon, Pandora came upon a man lying on the ground, gasping from the heat of fever. His family stood around him, helpless. She knelt beside him, placed her hand on his brow, and whispered softly, "You will not die alone. Your pain is not meaningless." The man's eyes flickered open. "Who are you?" he asked. She hesitated, for to name herself was to confess, but she answered truthfully, "I am Pandora." A murmur spread among the onlookers. Some stepped back in fear, others leaned forward in awe. The man, trembling, took her hand, and he said, "Then I forgive you, because without sorrow, I would not have known what joy was." And with that, he died. Pandora wept, but for the first time her tears were not only of guilt, they were of comprehension, the slow realization that the world she had wounded might through that very wound grow stronger. The box had not just released evils, it had awakened the soul of humanity. Meanwhile, in the cold northern mountains where Prometheus still lay bound, an eagle tearing at his immortal flesh each day, he felt a strange warmth rise from below. It was not the fire of vengeance, nor the heat of the sun, but the quiet flame of human perseverance. So, my gift was not in vain. Even the gods cannot unmake the courage of man. And for a brief moment, the eagle paused, as if even it, a creature of divine punishment, could feel the shift in the world's rhythm. The age of shadows deepened. Disease spread across continents, storms shattered homes, and famine hollowed out entire tribes. Yet humanity endured. Each tragedy gave birth to new understanding. People began to question why they suffered. Was it punishment, fate, or chance? Philosophers, long before the word existed, sat by dying fires and pondered the balance between gods and mortals. Why would the divine create beings capable of pain?
And if they must suffer, why also give them the capacity to hope?
Hope, the last spirit in Pandora's box, became humanity's silent companion. It could not erase the darkness, but it whispered through it. It spoke in the cry of a newborn, in the seed that pushed through barren soil, in the hand that reached out to comfort another. Hope was the fragile thread that held civilization together. Zeus observed all this from his throne. He saw the mortals suffer, but he also saw them build, dream, and persist. It troubled him. Punishment was meant to humble them, but instead it had given them depth. They were supposed to crawl, he muttered, and yet they rise. Hera, sitting beside him, replied, "Perhaps even you, my husband, cannot predict what the heart will do when faced with despair." The king of gods said nothing, for in his own heart, though he would never admit it, there was a flicker of respect for the very creatures he had sought to control. Pandora's journey took her to the edge of the known world, where she found a solitary cave and made it her refuge. She lived there gathering herbs, tending wounds, listening to the cries of those who came seeking understanding. Some came to curse her, others to seek wisdom. To each she gave the same answer: we suffer because we are alive. We endure because we hope. Her voice became legend, her presence myth. Some said she was cursed to wander forever, others that she became a spirit of mercy, healing what she had once harmed. Yet even in solitude, Pandora felt the lingering weight of the box. She had hidden it deep within the earth, yet sometimes she dreamed of it, glowing faintly in the dark, its lid trembling as though it still breathed. In her dreams, she heard a whisper, not of evil, but of something new. A voice that said, the box was never meant to destroy, but to awaken. She awoke one night to the sound of rain, the first rain the land had seen in months. She stepped outside, letting the drops wash her face, and for the first time since the opening, she smiled. The earth was renewing itself. Even destruction had sown the seeds of creation. The myth of Pandora, in its unfolding, became a mirror for all human existence. Every age would open its own box, of war, of knowledge, of invention, releasing new powers and new perils. Yet in every age, hope would remain. The Greeks who told her story did not see her as evil, but as inevitable. Pandora was humanity's reflection, beautiful, curious, flawed, and forever reaching beyond her limits. As the years passed, humanity grew wiser. They learned to harness the fire, to heal the sick, to plant and reap, to sing songs of mourning and of joy. They learned that pain could bind them closer than peace ever could. The memory of Pandora did not fade, it transformed. She was no longer seen merely as the bringer of misfortune, but as the mother of understanding. Through her, mankind learned that perfection is sterile, that only through struggle does the soul of creation find meaning. And somewhere, deep beneath the soil, the box remained, sealed once more, yet humming faintly, as though the spirits within still stirred. They were part of the cycle now, not enemies, but elements of being. For in every act of jealousy, there was the seed of ambition. In every sorrow, the spark of love. The world was not broken, it was alive.
When the storm of shadows had finally settled and the earth no longer trembled under the weight of divine retribution, a strange calm fell over humankind. It was not the peace of ignorance, but the stillness of awakening. Humanity, though scarred and shaken, had survived its first trial, and from that survival, something new began to grow. Out of pain came understanding, out of despair, imagination. The gods, who had once watched mankind as one might watch a pet or a plaything, now observed with curiosity of their own,
for mortals had begun to change in ways even Olympus had not foreseen. In the beginning, men and women had suffered blindly. They had wept, raged, and feared without knowing why. But now, they began to reflect. Around the fires Prometheus had given them, they gathered in the evenings and told stories, not merely of hunger or sickness, but of meaning. They spoke of Pandora, the woman whose hands had opened the gate to their pain, and they began to ask, was she cursed or chosen? The old men said she was a punishment. The young said she was a mirror. The women, especially, whispered of her in secret, not with hatred, but with a kind of understanding. For they too knew what it was to be blamed for curiosity, to bear the burden of both creation and consequence. And so began the first philosophy, though the word did not yet exist. Mankind sought not only to survive, but to understand why they suffered, why they loved, why they died. The opening of Pandora's box had been more than the release of evil. It was the birth of self-awareness. Pain had turned their gaze inward, forcing them to confront the mysteries of their own hearts. In the villages that dotted the once perfect earth, people began to build shrines, not to the gods of Olympus, but to forces they could feel but not see: fate, fortune, and time. These were invisible powers that seemed to weave through every life, binding joy and sorrow together. At first, they prayed for deliverance from suffering. But when deliverance did not come, they began to pray instead for understanding. And that subtle shift from asking the gods to remove their pain to asking for the strength to endure it marked the first step toward human maturity. Pandora herself had become a legend by then. To some, she was a ghost, to others, a wandering prophet. She still lived in solitude near the mountains, where she gathered herbs and whispered prayers to the earth. Her face had grown lined, but her eyes were bright, filled with that strange light born only from regret turned into wisdom. The people who came to seek her no longer came to curse her. They came for counsel. Once a young woman found her in the woods and said, "Tell me, Lady Pandora, why did you open the box? Did you not know it would bring ruin?" Pandora looked at her long and softly, then said, "If you ask whether I knew, the answer is both yes and no. I was told not to open it, but I was also made to wonder what lay inside. The gods gave me curiosity and then forbade its use. Can a heart resist what it was designed to seek?" The young woman frowned. "Then are we also doomed to fall by our nature?" Pandora smiled faintly. "No," she said. "We are destined to rise by it, for only those who fall know the strength to stand again."
The girl pondered this and went away changed, carrying in her the seed of a new truth, that to be human is not to be perfect, but to grow through imperfection. That seed would later bloom in countless hearts, in the minds of philosophers, poets, and dreamers who sought meaning amid the ruins of the Golden Age. Over time, as generations passed, humanity began to transform its pain into creation. The same hands that once trembled in fear now built homes, carved statues, and painted on stone. The same voices that once cried in despair now sang in harmony. The first art was born not from joy, but from longing, from the human need to make sense of sorrow. They painted the gods not as distant tyrants, but as mirrors of themselves, flawed, beautiful, and full of contradiction. They painted Pandora too, sometimes as a temptress, sometimes as a mother, sometimes as a child reaching for the forbidden. In every depiction, her eyes were always the same, wide, curious, and filled with something between fear and wonder. Artists found in her story the reflection of every human heart, the desire to know, the mistake that follows, and the redemption that blooms from regret. The poets began to speak of hope as a living spirit, not merely what remained in the box, but a goddess who walked unseen among mankind. She was said to appear in times of despair, not to remove suffering, but to whisper courage.
Her temple was the human heart, and her altar, endurance. Though no statue could capture her face, her presence was felt in every mother who refused to abandon her child, in every man who stood up after defeat, in every dream that persisted despite the night. In those days, the world was still dangerous. Famine came, wars began, jealousy and greed poisoned cities. Yet each trial forged a stronger humanity. Suffering, once seen as a curse, began to be recognized as the forge of meaning. Men who had lost everything began to ask themselves, if pain is inescapable, then what purpose can I give it? That question became the silent prayer of mankind, and from it, civilization began to take root. One evening, as the last light of day fell upon the mountains, Pandora sat outside her cave watching the horizon. The air smelled of smoke. Somewhere, a village was burning. She felt a heaviness in her chest, for she had seen too many such fires. And yet, as she watched, she noticed something. Even as the flames consumed the wooden huts, people ran back and forth, carrying water, rescuing children, shouting each other's names. Amid ruin, there was unity. Amid loss, love. It was then that she understood something she had never fully seen before. When she opened the box, she had not simply released evils upon the earth, she had released relationship. For before that moment, humankind had lived untouched by pain, and thus untouched by empathy. They had existed, but they had not belonged. Now they were bound together not by perfection, but by shared vulnerability. Every person carried a fragment of her guilt, and in carrying it, they carried one another.
That night, as she looked at the stars, Pandora spoke softly into the darkness, as though to the gods themselves. "You wanted to humble man," she said, "but you have made him divine in another way. You gave him pain, and he made it purpose. You gave him loss, and he made it love." On Olympus, Athena heard these words echo faintly through the wind, and she smiled. "Perhaps," she said to Zeus, "the punishment has become a gift." Zeus said nothing, but his eyes grew distant, reflecting the firelight of 1,000 mortal hearts. Deep within him, though he would never speak it aloud, there stirred a thought he had long denied, that the freedom of mortals was not a weakness to be punished, but a reflection of the divine itself. As the centuries unfolded, mankind continued to wrestle with its shadows. Every generation faced its own box: war, greed, ambition, the hunger for knowledge, and every generation opened it, unleashing new chaos and new creation. Yet in every darkness, hope survived. It was the invisible inheritance passed from Pandora to all her children, a legacy that could not be destroyed. Eventually, the tale of Pandora became less a warning and more a myth of transformation. Parents told it to their children not to frighten them, but to teach them that choices have weight, that curiosity must walk hand in hand with wisdom, and that mistakes are not the end, but the beginning of understanding. Remember, they would say, that even when the world breaks, hope remains. Philosophers began to interpret the myth not as divine vengeance, but as cosmic necessity. They said that perfection is static and sterile, while imperfection is the mother of movement. The opening of the box was the birth of time itself, the moment when humanity stepped out of eternity and into history, where every choice ripples into consequence. Pandora's act was the dawn of moral awareness, the realization that good and evil are not fixed, but woven together in the tapestry of existence. Poets sang that the box was not a prison, but a mirror, showing mankind the truth of its own heart. Within it lay not only suffering, but the reflection of every possibility: love, envy, grief, courage, and tenderness. To open it was to awaken. To live is to open it anew each day. And so humanity, in learning to suffer, learned also to create. They began to build temples not of marble, but of thought. They offered sacrifices not of blood, but of gratitude. They prayed not for an end to pain, but for the wisdom to transform it. Slowly, imperceptibly, mankind became the very thing Zeus had feared. beings who could look upon the divine not as slaves, but as equals in spirit. Pandora, now old and weary, saw this transformation with a quiet, bittersweet pride. Her hair had turned silver, her body frail, but her eyes remained the color of dawn. She often walked down to the villages, where children played and laughter echoed despite hardship. They called her Grandmother of Hope. She told them stories not of gods and punishments, but of courage, curiosity, and compassion. When they asked about the box, she would say, "It still lies buried, waiting. But remember, it is not the box that holds danger, it is the heart that must choose what to release." And sometimes, when she was alone, she would whisper a prayer, not to Zeus, but to the nameless spirit that lived within humanity. May they never stop questioning, for in questioning lies the road to wisdom. And may they never lose hope, for without it, the stars themselves would grow cold. In that prayer, the myth found its fulfillment. Pandora, once cursed as the bringer of doom, became instead the mother of meaning, the first philosopher, the first artist, the first human to bear the full weight of being. Through her, mankind learned that to err is not to fall from grace, but to enter it. The gods, seeing the world transformed, grew silent, for even they could not undo what had been born, a species capable of turning suffering into beauty and guilt into grace.
Centuries passed, and the story of Pandora no longer lived only in whispered prayers or crumbling myths. It had become a living pulse within the heart of civilization itself. Humanity, ever restless, began to build its empires upon the ashes of its suffering. The memory of the Golden Age faded into legend, but the lessons of Pandora's folly endured, shaping how mortals saw themselves and the world they inhabited. Hope, that last whisper from the depths of the box, became both a comfort and a burden. It was the invisible fire that drove humankind to rise again after every fall. Yet it was also the haunting reminder that peace was never permanent, that perfection was always one breath beyond reach. In every generation, the myth of Pandora echoed in new forms, in religion, in art, in politics, in the private sorrow of every soul who dared to dream despite the inevitability of loss. In the ancient world, philosophers began to wrestle with the paradox she had left behind. Was hope a blessing, or merely another form of torment? Hesiod had written that hope remained trapped in the jar because it was the most dangerous thing of all, for it could deceive, delaying acceptance of suffering's truth. Yet others, like the later poets and thinkers, argued that hope was humanity's divine spark, the last bridge between the mortal and the eternal. The debate spread like fire through the early civilizations. In Athens, orators spoke of it in the agora, where citizens gathered under the marble gaze of Athena. They argued that Pandora's box symbolized the soul itself, a vessel filled with conflicting forces, capable of both creation and destruction. To open it was to live fully, to awaken the self. Meanwhile, across seas and deserts, in temples far from Greece, similar myths arose, stories of forbidden knowledge, of first women, of the fall and rise of humankind. Each carried within it the same pulse, the yearning for meaning in a world shaped by suffering. In every culture, the spirit of Pandora was reborn under new names: Eve, Inanna, Lilith, Isis, Kali, goddesses of both ruin and rebirth, bearers of knowledge and chaos. Humanity, through its myths, kept rewriting the same truth in different tongues, that awakening always comes with a price. As civilization matured, men began to turn from the capricious gods toward the inner divinity of reason. They built schools instead of shrines,
laboratories instead of temples. The philosophers of Alexandria spoke of the universe not as a whim of Olympus, but as a vast order governed by laws. Laws that human minds could learn if only they dared to look deeply enough. Curiosity, once condemned as Pandora's sin, became the virtue that defined the new age.
And yet, even as knowledge grew, so did its shadows. For every discovery that healed, there was another that harmed. The flame Prometheus had stolen now burned in new forms. Fire became forge. Forge became weapon. Men learned to measure the stars, but they also learned to wage war with terrifying precision. It was as if the box had never truly been closed. Each new invention was another lid lifted, another spirit unleashed. But within that endless cycle of creation and destruction, hope endured. It changed shape, like a flame adjusting to the wind. It became the hope of progress, of justice, of enlightenment. It was no longer a whisper in the dark. It was a cry in the streets, a revolution in thought. The thinkers of the age began to see Pandora not as a bringer of doom, but as the first scientist, the first seeker of truth. She had opened the box not out of malice, but out of the irresistible hunger to know. And what is knowledge, if not the greatest rebellion against divine ignorance? From this interpretation was born the idea that humanity's fall was not its end, but its beginning, that Paradise Lost was simply innocence exchanged for consciousness. The box had opened the way not to destruction, but to evolution. Suffering, seen through this new lens, was the crucible of growth. In time, this reimagining found its way into the world's great faiths and philosophies. The Eastern sages spoke of life as a wheel, samsara, where pain and joy revolve endlessly until enlightenment is found. The Christian mystics, centuries later, would speak of a felix culpa, a blessed fault. The idea that the very act of falling made redemption possible. Every path led back to Pandora, her choice to open, her willingness to face what lay beyond obedience. Yet hope, for all its beauty, remained elusive. It shimmered just beyond the horizon of every age. Empires rose, burned, and fell. The same vices that had escaped her box, greed, envy, pride, took on new forms, wearing the robes of kings and priests. Humanity built monuments to virtue and weapons of conquest in the same breath. Still, the idea of redemption, of making meaning out of suffering, refused to die. It lived in the voices of prophets, poets, and rebels who defied despair. They spoke of justice, of equality, of love stronger than death. Each was, in their own way, a child of Pandora, daring to open new boxes, to challenge what the world declared forbidden. In a quiet corner of history, somewhere between myth and memory, Pandora's name became forgotten, yet her spirit endured. Every woman who dared to question, every thinker who challenged tradition, every artist who painted truth even when it hurt, they all carried a spark of her defiance. Humanity began to understand that hope was not the denial of evil, but the courage to confront it. It was not a promise that things would be easy, but the insistence that they were worth enduring. Hope was the silent companion of every great act of creation, from the building of cathedrals to the writing of poems, from the tending of a dying garden to the raising of a newborn child.
And yet, as the world grew more complex, Pandora's shadow lengthened. The more humanity learned, the more dangerous its knowledge became. The box had evolved, no longer a jar of clay, but an idea, a machine, a code. Wars became global, weapons apocalyptic, truths fractured. Each generation opened new boxes, atomic, digital, genetic, and from each came both wonder and terror. The gods, if they still watched, must have seen their reflection multiplied in the minds of mortals. Humanity had become as they once were, creators of light and darkness, destroyers and redeemers. And perhaps that was the ultimate irony, that in punishing mankind with curiosity and suffering, the gods had ensured their own obsolescence. Yet hope, stubborn and radiant, persisted even through the smoke of the modern world. It appeared in the acts of those who still believed in goodness despite the evidence of evil. The healer tending to the wounded, the teacher lighting young minds, the artist painting beauty in the ruins. In every gesture of compassion, hope reasserted itself as the quiet counterweight to despair. In this way, Pandora's legacy became humanity's heartbeat, the rhythm of fall and rise, error and awakening. The story no longer belonged to Olympus. It belonged to every person who faced the unknown with trembling hands and dared to open it anyway. One could almost imagine Pandora's spirit wandering the modern earth, unseen but ever present. Perhaps she walks through cities at dawn, watching the lights flicker on, the hum of life, the laughter and the sorrow, the questions written into the faces of millions. Perhaps she pauses at the door of a laboratory or a library or a nursery and whispers, "Be careful, but be brave." Because the lesson of the box was never not to open it. The lesson was to open it consciously, to understand that within every discovery lies danger, and within every danger lies possibility. The true curse is not curiosity, it is blindness to consequence. The box, in truth, was not a punishment from Zeus, but a mirror of the cosmos, a container of everything that could ever be, waiting for a hand brave enough to lift the lid. Pandora's act was the first creative gesture, the moment the universe became aware of itself. And so, humanity continues the work she began. Each generation opens its own box, through art, through science, through love, and from each comes both suffering and salvation. Every question asked, every risk taken, every act of compassion repeated in the face of despair is another echo of that ancient act of opening. Hope, then, is not what remains when the box is closed. It is what escapes and spreads, multiplying in secret places, refusing extinction. It is what turns ruins into gardens and grief into song. As long as hope breathes, Pandora's story will never end. It lives in the trembling movement before every new beginning, the quiet breath before a child's first step, the uncertain hand reaching toward the unknown, the heart that chooses to love again after loss. And if you listen closely, beneath the noise of history, you can still hear the sound of that lid opening once more, not in fear, but in faith.
The night was long, and the stars seemed ancient beyond measure. Yet beneath their cold and distant gaze, humanity still burned, small fires flickering across the endless dark, like scattered embers that refused to die. The earth had aged, civilizations had risen and fallen, and still, the echo of Pandora's act resounded through the corridors of existence. The story had become myth, then parable, then forgotten whisper. But it lived, as all truths do, in the marrow of the human spirit. For though millennia had passed, the essence of the box remained. It was no longer made of clay or sealed by divine hands. It was woven into the fabric of being itself. Every human soul carried a fragment of it,
a personal vessel of possibility, filled with both darkness and light. Each life was its own Pandora's box, waiting to be opened by choice, by experience, by the inescapable unfolding of time. And time itself, that great weaver of destinies, had learned the rhythm of humanity's heart. Rise and fall, despair and hope, death and renewal. The same cycle that had begun with one woman's trembling hands now pulsed through history like an eternal heartbeat. The story of Pandora was not the end of innocence, it was the beginning of consciousness. And consciousness, once awakened, cannot sleep again. As the world evolved, mankind began to look upward once more, not toward Olympus, but toward the infinite sky. The gods had faded into metaphor, yet their shadows lived on in human ambition. The heavens that once housed divine beings had become a frontier of science, mystery, and wonder. The telescopes of a new age sought not Zeus or Athena, but galaxies and creation itself. Still, in that search for understanding, there was the same hunger that once drove Pandora to lift the lid, the yearning to know, to unveil what lies hidden. With every new discovery, humanity opened another box. Some contained miracles, cures for disease, revelations of the stars, tools that united the world. Others unleashed new evils, pollution, division, weapons that could scorch the earth in a breath. The pattern persisted like a cosmic dance, curiosity leading to revelation, revelation to power, power to destruction, and destruction to rebirth. It was as if the universe itself was teaching the same lesson over and over, waiting for humanity to finally understand that knowledge without wisdom is just another form of blindness. But hope, eternal, quiet, luminous hope, never left. She had evolved alongside humankind, changing shape as the ages demanded. In the ancient world, she was a whisper in the temples. In the Renaissance, a spark in the artist's brush. In the Enlightenment, a gleam in the philosopher's eye. In the modern world, she became resilience, the unseen force that kept people standing when reason itself faltered.
Hope became the unspoken law of the cosmos, that for every fall, there must be a rising. For every ending, a beginning. It was not naive optimism, nor denial of suffering, but a deeper faith, the belief that existence, for all its pain, is still meaningful. Hope is not the absence of despair. It is the courage to walk through despair and still seek light. In this realization lay the final evolution of Pandora's legacy. Her story, once told as tragedy, became a cosmic metaphor for the very nature of creation. The gods, in their arrogance, had sought to test humankind, to punish curiosity and pride. But in doing so, they had set in motion the wheel of evolution, the awakening of self. The box had never been a curse. It had been a mirror, a womb, a doorway to becoming. In the quiet chambers of the human mind, philosophers began to sense this deeper truth. They saw in the myth a reflection of the universe itself, the primordial void, the chaos before creation, the moment when order emerges from uncertainty. Every atom, every star, every heart that beats is another box opened, another risk embraced. Life, by its very nature, is an act of curiosity, and therefore of divine defiance. And so humanity began to find divinity not in distant gods, but in its own capacity to create, to love, to endure. The sacred was no longer something separate from the world. It was the world itself, flawed, wounded, and radiant. The light that Pandora released, buried beneath all the evils of the box, was not a separate entity called hope. It was the divine spark within consciousness, the awareness that meaning can exist even in suffering.
This understanding transformed how humanity saw itself. The myth became a philosophy that evil and good are not opposites, but partners in the dance of becoming. Pain births compassion. Ignorance calls forth wisdom. Destruction makes room for renewal. Every fall is the seed of flight. Pandora, in her fateful choice, had not doomed the world, she had set it in motion. And yet the cycle was not without danger, for even as mankind grew wiser, the temptation to play God grew stronger. With the power to create life, to alter nature, to reach beyond the stars, humanity once again stood at the edge of the unknown, another box before them, glowing with possibility and peril. Would they open it with reverence or with pride? Would they remember the lesson hidden in their oldest story? Perhaps this is the eternal question, the one written into the fabric of time itself. For each generation must face its own Pandora's box. It may be a new technology, a moral crisis, a personal revelation, but the essence is always the same. The choice between fear and curiosity, between denial and awakening. And perhaps, too, this is why hope was placed inside the box last, not as a consolation prize, but as a guide, the force that ensures that no matter how deep the night becomes, there will always be a dawn waiting to be discovered. Hope is not separate from the evils of the world. It grows from them, like a flower rising from decay. It is the proof that meaning can survive chaos, that love can outlast loss.
In this way, Pandora's story is not only about the beginning of human suffering, but about the endless process of transformation. It teaches that the universe itself is alive with paradox, that beauty and terror are woven together, that to open the box is to embrace both. Every act of living, every breath is a small opening, a release of possibilities, some light, some shadow. To exist is to keep opening. In the distant future, perhaps 1,000 years from now, when humanity has changed beyond recognition, when the earth itself may be reshaped or left behind, the myth will still whisper through the dust of time. Somewhere, in a new form, a being will stand before another box, not of clay, but of starlight, and will feel the same trembling curiosity, the same fear, the same irresistible desire to know. And in that moment, Pandora will live again. Because she is not just a figure of the past. She is the eternal symbol of consciousness itself, the mind's awakening to the infinite, the heart's willingness to face what it cannot control. Every thinker, every explorer, every artist who has ever reached beyond the known world has been her descendant. And every person who has suffered, fallen, and risen again has lived her story anew. Perhaps that is the true immortality, not the gods who live forever, but the myth that repeats, reshaping itself in each new soul. Pandora's box is not an artifact, it is the human condition. It is the symbol of the eternal return, the cycle through which we fall, learn, rise, and fall again, endlessly refining the spirit. And so, as the stars wheel through the heavens and the earth continues its long turning, one truth remains unbroken. The box will always be opened and hope will always endure. For what is life but the courage to open what cannot be closed, to love what can be lost, to build in the ruins and sing in the dark? Pandora, the first dreamer, the first philosopher, the first rebel, lives in each of us. Her curiosity was not sin, it was creation itself. The gods punished her for seeking truth, but it was through her that truth entered the world. And though the evils she released still walk among us, they are not our doom, they are our teachers. For without pain, there is no compassion. Without failure, no growth. Without loss, no love.
and without hope, no reason to begin again. The story ends where it began. A box, a choice, a trembling hand reaching into the unknown. The difference now is understanding. Humanity no longer fears the act of opening. It honors it. Because to open the box is to be alive, to confront the fullness of existence with all its shadows and all its light. The echo of that ancient act will never fade. It hums beneath the pulse of every heart, whispers through every prayer, burns in every dream. The gods are gone, but their lesson remains, transformed into something far greater than divine command, human wisdom. Pandora's box was not the end of Eden. It was the dawn of the soul. And the soul, for all its frailty, for all its endless mistakes, will always choose to open again.